So, good morning. If I could ask folks to start getting seated and we can get started. Man, this is new for me.
Rely on Francesca and the council.
Good morning, Chair. We do have a quorum. Okay, but I'll sit here.
So, good morning and welcome to the February 3rd, 2023 Sandak Transportation Committee meeting. And I will go ahead and call the meeting to order at 9:03 or so. So before I move forward, I'd like to ask our interpreter to give us information on how to access the interpretation. Ms. Ruth Monroy?
Yes, good morning. The following announcement is for remote participants, and I will repeat the message in English. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular o tableta, presione los puntos suspensivos, luego Interpretation y luego el idioma. To use the Zoom interpreting feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are located and click on the interpretation icon, which is the world icon, and then select your language. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone or tablet, please press the ellipses, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to see if we have a quorum. So our clerk, Ms. Francesca Webb, do we have a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. This is the first meeting for this year, and we have a few new board members, and in fact, for that matter, new committee members, and me being one of them. So I thought we'd do a self-introduction, but I thought we'd do it a little differently, and I'll model it first. So it's going to be your name, what city you're from, or what part of the county you represent on this committee, and then how long it took for you to get here, since this is our transportation. So let me go ahead and model that first, and then we'll go to Gustavo and work around this table. So my name is Jack Hsu. I'm a city council member from the city of La Mesa, and I'm representing East County on this commission, on this committee. And somehow, at the last minute, I became selected to be the chair. So I'm very honored to be the chair, and I hope I do a good job at that. And I got here this morning. It took me about 45 minutes through the Orange Line trolley. So that was my route here. Fairly easy, nice ride. Gustavo, can you start?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair Hsu. I'm Gustavo Galarda, the Caltrans District 11 Director, and District 11 covers San Diego and Imperial counties. I've been with Caltrans for 31 years, all of them here in the region. And I've been the district director for approximately the last 3 years. And I got here with the Green Line. I actually missed the blue trolley, but the Green Line took me to Santa Fe Depot, and it was a nice walk from there. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Chair. So my name is Sandy Naranjo. I am the Vice Chair for the Port of San Diego, responsible for 34 miles of your public tidelands. And I've proudly been appointed by my city of National City, and it took me actually 30 minutes to get here. Driving, of course.
Good morning. My name is Esther Sanchez, Mayor for the City of Oceanside. I thought first that you were, how long did it take to get here? It took me 22 years to get here as on a Sandak committee, but you mean from the City of Oceanside. So yes, I did drive and gave myself an hour and a half, and actually it was only 35 minutes. and I represent the Airport Authority. That's how I got onto Sandag.
Priyabhat Patel, council member in the city of Carlsbad, vice chair for North County Transit District, and it took me about 45 minutes on the 5.
Dave Zito, I'm the alternate for North County Coastal, subbing in today for Mayor Tony Kranz, who is the primary for North County Coastal. I'm the deputy mayor for the city of Solana Beach, and it took me about an hour and a half to get here today via bike.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is John Duncan. I'm a council member from the city of Coronado, representing the South County, and it took me 7 minutes to get here via Uber.
Joel Anderson, County of San Diego. If I had taken public transportation from Alpine this morning, I would have had to leave yesterday. It took me 42 minutes by car.
Good morning, Raul Campillo, San Diego City Council Member District 7, representing the City of San Diego as the Vice Chair again. Thank you very much I appreciate Chair of Sandag, Nora Vargas, for that honorable appointment this year. And it took me 19 minutes to get here this morning, so by car.
Thank you. You know, we have other members, and I'd like everyone on the, or at least in the table, to introduce themselves as well. So maybe Colleen, you can go around as well. It shouldn't take too long.
Good morning. I'm Colleen Clemenson. I'm Deputy CEO here at Sandag, and I have a beautiful commute from Point Loma along Harbor Drive, and it takes me about 14 minutes, door to door, door to seat and desk.
Thank you.
Good morning, Brian Lane, Senior Transit Planner with Sandag, the staff coordinator for the Transportation Committee. I'll be doing a presentation to give you all a 101 on the TC later this morning. I also took the trolley this morning from La Mesa, so it was about 40 minutes.
Good morning, I'm Amber Lynn Deaton. I'm Sandag's Deputy General Counsel, and I arrived today by car about 20 minutes with 2 school stops in between.
I'm Betsy Blake, Senior Legal Counsel for Sandag, and I drove today and it took from Del Mar Heights and it took me about 22 minutes. But when I do transit, it's bike to the coaster to the trolley, and that takes me an hour.
Hi, I'm Sharon Cooney. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Metropolitan Transit System. I've been in my position for 3 years, and I've been attending Sandag meetings since 2001. So I've been here a lot. I took the trolley to get here from our headquarters at 12th and Imperial. And so from my desk on the 10th floor to here, it took me 15 minutes.
I'm Rafael Perez. I'm a new board member on the Airport Authority. I'm the Airport Authority alternate, and it took me about 10 minutes downhill from Sherman Heights on bicycle.
How long will it take you to go back up?
About 20.
That's the tougher question. Thank you all for doing that. Let's go to item number 1, which is a public comment. And so Francesca, do we have any public commenters? And I don't know, this will be for 3 minutes. We take 5 public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and then if there's any others remaining, we'll go later.
This is non-agenda.
That's right. There's non-agenda public comments. So Francesca, do we have any public comments? And we'll take in-person first and then virtual.
Thank you, Chair. We do have 2 in-person comments and 1 I see on Zoom. Timothy Bilish, if you'd like to step up to the podium first. Timothy will be followed by Nicole Burgess.
Good morning, committee. My name is Timothy Bilash. I come from Mid-County to South Coastal San Diego. Been here about 15 years now and try to get to every San Diego meeting I can. So welcome to the new members and thanks to the previous ones. I want to express my support for the chair, Jack Hsu. I've gone to a lot of meetings and I do appreciate your attention to health and safety and the well-being of the community here in San Diego. So I applaud their choice. I just want to mention, I was in St. Louis a couple of months ago. I may have mentioned it in another meeting, and I talked about the ride passes for 18 and under, the pilot program that Sandag put in at the last minute that raised the budget. And my friend said to me, oh, we've had that here for years. Sometimes we get the feeling that because everybody says, I wish I lived in San Diego, that we're ahead of the curve. We're way behind the curve. And anybody interested, I could point out some details. There are plenty of people. I rise in support for the members of staff and the executive committee of the Sandag organization. I am appalled at some of the treatment in the local press, particularly in the past. This has come up at other meetings. And not an issue maybe for this committee, but I think it's important enough. Sandag stands for San Diego Association of Governances, not governments. It's not a political organization and shouldn't be forced into that role. And in my opinion, some of the changes this year trying to alleviate the congestion of dealing with political leaders in the area have caused it to move in that direction, perhaps. Now, I'm not an insider and I don't know for sure. This is also not a football game where one side wins. It's not a high school rally where you rank on other people. And so what I would ask is that committee members and members of the boards to be consistent in your deliberations and measured in your actions with open transparency for your agendas. I think that's all I'm going to say this morning. So welcome to the new members, and I applaud your actions. Bye.
Thank you. Next will be Nicole Burgess, and after Nicole, we'll move to Catherine Rhodes on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Board Transportation Committee. This is fabulous to see actually kind of a small group. So I thank you. And I thank Chair Jack Hsu for your introduction, because it's like was on the top of my mind, right? Like, how do you all get here? I got here from Point Loma by bike, and I'm just bringing a little bike love today because I had an amazing, beautiful 45-minute commute. So Dave Zito and Raphael, you're my heroes today. Sending you a little bike love. We'll pass those out, but thank you, because that makes a huge impact in how we view our cities and how we view transportation. So all of us being able to get out and explore the city by bike, I appreciate that. And I appreciate those that took transit. So thank you to the 4 of you, 5 of you that took transit. That's awesome. I love it. That's how we learn how to improve our time out there commuting. I often say commuting by bike is the best part of my day. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to get down here today, because sometimes it takes a little courage to get down here. Again, Jack Hsu, thank you. Amazing. I'm happy and proud of you for being chair. Kudos to Carlsbad for prioritizing, funding, and implementing safe streets. Appreciate the leadership there, advocacy there, and the public engagement to really be mindful of everybody on our roads. I mean, traffic violence is real. I'm not going to get into that one. Oceanside, haha, yay. Coast Highway is going to get down to 1 lane. Thank you. I dream of that for the entire region, actually all of California. So 1 lane with a multi-class 1 bike path for us to go all the way to San Francisco on a bike would, I mean, dream come true, right? San Diego, great to see you, Raul. Thank you for your leadership for safe streets. I actually came here about 12 years ago, sat within the chair with Jack Hsu, so I have good memories of that, advocating for Nimitz Boulevard to have safer streets. I thank the city of San Diego for taking a class 4 approach. Amazing, but I'm still relying on Sandag and Caltrans to get us over those dangerous intersections of I-8, just deadly intersections, right? So appreciate all the work San Diego is doing, but there's a lot more to do. Imperial Beach, you're amazing because you do stormwater treatment. I don't know if Imperial Beach is here, but they do amazing work with capturing water in all their street design, and those become buffers for our bike lanes. Amazing. National City, love you. Safe routes to schools. Your staff is amazing. Solana Beach and Encinitas, you're doing amazing work up on the coast. Again, making our coastline accessible for people to commute by bike. So that's what it's about. I do have Caltrans on here, woo woo. You have prioritized safety, and I appreciate the collaboration and with all stakeholders, the city of San Diego and Sandag, to make those connections. Those are critical, and Sandag is right up in here to work on those major connections across the freeway. Thank you, sending bike love to all of you. You have a postcard here. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Catherine Rhodes. Catherine, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Good morning. And Thank you, Jack, for a wonderful introduction. I was wondering who's on this board, so that's very much perfect. And I saved 20 minutes each way up by car by being online, which is lovely. And so first what I want to do is I wanted to thank the County of San Diego and Joel Anderson for all their fabulous work that they've done as it relates to homeless by adopting the voluntary Appendix P of the California Building Code for minimum health and safety standards. And now that allows the county to have tiny homes anywhere. And I mean anywhere. That includes the city of San Diego. Theoretically, it would include Balboa Park or Mission Bay. And so also what I wanted to do is thank Gustavo of Caltrans. His right-of-way staff is working with county staff, and they're coming up with some locations, specifically maybe in the park and rides or some other areas where we could put homeless on our Caltrans right-of-way, like the Neil Good Day Center. And then now for the Neil Good Day Center. For Raul Campillo, I'm not sure if you know, but the Neil Good Day Center is having less hours because there's not enough, because Mayor Todd Gloria pretends that there's not enough money to fund it. And so here's my solution that actually involves everybody. My solution is for the County of San Diego to work with the City of San Diego and give them the American Rescue Plan Act funds. There's over $500 million in these funds available, and give it so that we could keep the Neil Good Day Center at least open as much as it is now. And the second thing I'm asking for is that the county, just even today, before you guys leave, if possible, if the county and the city could get together and say, hey, can we approve the Lucky Duck Foundation, the 500 tents at Balboa Park at Inspiration Point? All we need is one person from the city and one person from the county to push it forward. And since you guys are here, I'm asking you to push it forward. And what that would require is for you to call up the Lucky Duck Foundation. That's it. Call them up and ask them exactly what they need. They could tell you exactly what they need, which is great. And so anyway, again, thank you for everybody for everything that you guys are doing for the homeless. And I want to mention the change from the 1% to the 2% for administration fees for SANDAG staff that I think people didn't understand that they approved before. Some of the reason for that is because you guys have an audit committee now and you need to, pay your audit committee administration staff. You also have, you're doing a whole bunch of other things besides transportation. Now you're doing a lot of environmental and housing and stuff like that. That's why you need more staff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes the public commenters.
On to comments from the board. We have a board member just stepped in. So Erica, can you introduce yourself and tell us how you got here?
Good morning, Chair. My name is Erica Pinto. Today I'm representing Southern California Tribal Chair Association, but I'm also the chairwoman of the Jamul Indian Village of California. My tribe is about 20 minutes off the 94 East. Today I have the pleasure of introducing or meeting Dr. Jill Biden on the airport tarmac. So I had a good COVID test all the way from Alpine and came down here this morning. Happy to be here. I was appointed by the Southern California Tribal Chair Association about 4 years ago. Good to see you all. Happy New Year.
Thank you. So any comments from the board on as we start? Hearing none, we can move on to Gustavo. Oh, I'm sorry, Gustavo. I didn't see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to mention something that you may have seen in the news, and it's good news for the region. At the January California Transportation Commission meeting, Caltrans was able to amend the Coronado Suicide Prevention Barrier Project into the SHOP. The SHOP is the State Highway Operations and Protection Program. And we were also able to secure $14 million of funding for the design and permitting of this project so that this project can ultimately move to construction. So I just wanted to report on that. And then just a quick reminder that we have two comprehensive multimodal corridor plans, final plans that are up for comment, public comment. We're receiving comments until March 11th. That's the North Coast Corridor CMCP and also the Coast Canyons and Trails CMCP. Thank you.
Any other comments from committee members? If not, we could go to the agency report provided by Deputy Chief Executive Director Colleen Clemens.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome, 2023 Transportation Committee. It's truly my honor to serve as your staff here, and we're excited about what's ahead in the new year. So we want to make ourselves available to you so you can make your best decisions possible. Just to start off, we did recently post our 2022 annual report. We have about a 3-minute video that gives an overview of that. So I want to ask our production team to go ahead and show that, and then I'll run through some of the key things that we're working on right now.
"2022 was a transformational year for the San Diego region. Through the Sandag Regional Plan, we set the vision for the future of transportation every 4 years. One of our top priorities for decades, moving the low sand tracks off the Del Mar Bluffs, has gained the attention of the nation.
We're going to make sure the second busiest rail corridor in America, connecting San Diego and Los Angeles, is going to be open and running for a long time.
Thanks to the leadership of California Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins and Congressman Mike Levin, Sandag received major state and federal funding for the Low Sand Corridor. The national spotlight also shined on another Sandag priority project, the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry. As the recipient of the largest infra grant in the country, this project will provide much-needed relief to our current land ports by facilitating a new state-of-the-art border crossing between the U.S. and Mexico.
We are pleased to award the California DOT $150 million for the Otay Mesa East Port project.
And this announcement was made on the heels of an historic toll revenue sharing agreement.
The work of Sandag and the can-do attitude of the people of both sides of the border is so remarkable.
Sandag also continues to work on creating a direct transit link to the San Diego International Airport and a central mobility hub to ensure a fast and convenient connection to every part of the region. We've come a long way. A year after celebrating the completion of one of the largest infrastructure projects in our region's history, the Midcoast Trolley extension of the UC San Diego Blue Line has already served more than 2 million riders. And we doubled down on our investment to equity with the launch of the Youth Opportunity Pass pilot program, providing free transit passes for riders 18 and under. And ridership numbers are through the roof, with up to 92% monthly increase in youth transit rides since the pilot started. Sandag is also connecting people to key resources through data-driven planning, building, and funding that will benefit our residents today and for generations to come. We launched the Digital Equity Program to ensure everyone has access to high-speed and affordable internet. And as part of our Housing Acceleration Program, we've partnered with state and local agencies, community-based organizations, and affordable housing developers to promote equitable housing throughout our region. Sandag is dedicated to making sure our communities have safe transportation options for people who walk, bike, and roll. Our regional bike network had a record-breaking year. In 2022, we opened 11 miles of new bikeways and broke ground on nearly 5 more. And Sandag is thinking outside the box. At our first ever Sandag Community Fair, we showcased our request for innovative concepts, a unique collaboration with the nation's brightest innovators to create cutting-edge transportation solutions. And we're just getting started. Sandag is delivering key projects and programs through Transnet and our other grant programs to improve how people get around, protect endangered species and their habitats, and provide mobility options for aging populations and individuals with disabilities. At Sandag, we hold ourselves accountable to the communities we serve. With more than 70 ongoing projects in every corner of the county, we are committed to creating a San Diego region where every person who visits, works, and lives can thrive.
All
right. Thank you for your attention on that. Looking ahead, a few things that we wanted to update you on. We've wasted no time in the last few weeks. We've been in Washington, D.C. advocating for Sandag projects, and also up in Sacramento meeting with all the our congressional leadership agencies, where we're telling them you need to fund us because we've got a plan and we know what we're doing. And then also with our California legislators. And we did meet with Senator Brian Jones, and he pointed out, he said, hey, Sandag, do you have anything to do with what's happening at the airport? Like the way that whole project is coming along is really great. I said, I wish we could say, yes, we're supporting them. But anyway, wanted to pass that along, that he was super proud of what's happening there. With respect to the regional plan, this continues to come up, the road usage charge. And I just want to make it really clear to everyone here that we are in the process of amending the plan to take the road usage charge out, as was directed by the board. I wish it was as easy as just like taking a pencil and putting a line through it, but there's a lot of analysis that has to be done to complete that work. We're doing that analysis now. We have to do a supplemental environmental document that will come out in the next couple of months, and we're planning to be before the board of directors in June with the draft amended plan and the CEQA document for the board's approval to submit to the state. So just whatever you're hearing in the news, the work is being done to take that out of the plan. While we're working on that, we're also working on our next plan. The regional plan has to be updated every 4 years. So the next plan is due to the state and the federal government at the end of 2025. So that work is getting underway. So we're going to complete the amendment, but at the same time, we're working on the entire revamp of the plan. And we're kicking that off with a workshop with a number of our working groups. And many of your staffs are involved in that. So we have all the planning directors from the local jurisdictions, public works directors from the local jurisdictions. We have a social equity working group. And so that meeting is planned in the next couple of weeks to really kind of kick off that process. And the reason that's so important is we have to start with a good understanding of what is in all the local land use plans, so we can match that up with the best possible transportation network that will meet state law, federal law, equity, and our climate goals and requirements. So anyway, more to come on all of that, but I just wanted to let you know that that was all getting underway. A couple of other things to report. Thankfully, the bluffs in San Diego County we haven't had experienced anything where we've actually had to close down the low sand rail corridor during these recent storms. That hasn't been the case to our friends up in Orange County, but the latest news is that they will be opening this weekend. So no longer that bus bridge, that the train will actually be able to go straight here from San Diego up to Los Angeles and back. So we're working very closely with all of the entities along that rail corridor. And one of the things we're talking about in Sacramento is the working group that we need to set up so that we make sure everyone is in the tent as we work to improve that rail corridor. And I'm looking at Sharon Humphreys over there, who is our director of engineering, and she continues to remind us all that that rail corridor is only as good as our weakest link. So while we may be in better shape because we've got $300 million to get our project underway, and that's fantastic, we need to be advocating for the entire corridor. When I was in Washington, D.C., I had the opportunity to take the Northeast Corridor train. So that's the busiest rail corridor in the entire nation. So between New York and Washington, D.C., and in less than 3 hours, I made that trip through 5 states. It goes 150 miles an hour. It's extremely well utilized. I got off the train and was able to walk right to where the meetings were in Washington, D.C. And there's no reason we shouldn't have that same kind of service here in our region between San Diego and Los Angeles. So anyway, on to other big projects, the Otay Mesa East port of entry. So I just wanted to point out Betsy Blake, who's our lead attorney, who's been helping us tremendously in putting all the agreements together with how we'll share revenue from the State Route 11 with Mexico, all of the agreements that are necessary so that we can actually turn this project over to the federal government when it's done and ready to go. So we're continuing to work with federal agencies to get the funding necessary to actually staff all those booths at the new port of entry. So we're continuing that. We'll continue to update you on that as we make progress. We're still working on the airport transit connection and the central mobility hub. So we're doing some additional analysis on a best location for a central mobility hub, working with Sharon Cooney and her team at MTS on how to make that high-speed transit connection. So in the next couple of months, we'll be presenting that report both to this committee and to the board of directors. So that's still a high priority for the agency. We're also working on the scope of work to develop a new rail line, which we call the Purple Line, otherwise known as the Jobs Train. So that would be a new rail line that would connect from the border into our most urbanized areas in the region and to the major job centers in Kearney Mesa, Sorrento Valley, making a strong connection at where all the hospitals are there in Kearney Mesa area, and then on connecting back into the low sand train. So we're getting that work underway, the scope of work for that set of planning, as well as working with MTS on how we really speed up the blue line. So those are two things that are underway. Continuing to see great success with the Youth Opportunity Pass. So that's the 18 and under free transit. We've seen exponential growth in the ridership from youth. And what's really great is that we're really able to monitor exactly where that is happening. And Brian Lane, our awesome senior transit planner here, is going to be looking at that data so that we can really be able to look at what is the benefit of that level of investment. And then what happens if we can go forward and actually doing 24 and under, so that we can provide the same level of affordable transportation to individuals who are going to our community colleges, for example. So that was one of the things we were talking about in both Washington and in the state offices over the last couple of weeks, is the importance of fully funding that. So we've been working very closely with MTS and NCTD on that as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that we're working very closely with Caltrans. So Gustavo and his team, we're also up in Sacramento talking with the director of Caltrans, Tony Tavares, about how we really look at some of our major highways in the region and advance some of the work to bring on the managed lanes sooner than later. So we're really piloting that in a couple of areas. We're excited about the opportunity to partner with this company, Cavnu. They're really leaders in how you use technology to better manage the highway system. And they were one of the 3 highly ranked competitors in the request for innovative concepts that we completed recently. So we're looking for an opportunity to partner with them and doing that work on one of our major highways. So anyway, lastly, I just wanted to point out that last year we received almost $500 million from state and federal grants for the low sand corridor and then also for the Otay Mesa Port of Entry. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've received more than close to $7 million to complete a portion of the bikeway, the university. I'm looking at you, Deputy Mayor Zito, because I know you'll appreciate this and you bike all over the region, to complete the University Avenue bikeway, as well as $2.5 million to help support our Safe Streets and Roads for All. So this is really implementing the Vision Zero program that the Board of Directors approved with the regional plan. So for now, that completes my report. Again, just very excited to welcome you all to the 2023 Transportation Committee, and whatever the team here can do to support you, we're all in. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. Any public comments on this item, Francisco?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public commenter, Catherine Rhodes. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for the lovely report. That was wonderful. I had a lot of questions and you answered quite a few of them. So thank you. I just kind of wanted to remind you of my public scoping comments for the supplemental EIR. Instead of just a limited amount of resource areas, I think you really do need to do a comprehensive update analysis for both the 2023 draft supplemental EIR and 2025 EIR for greenhouse gas emissions, geology, soils, mineral resources, transportation, water supply, hydrology, water quality, public service and utilities, geologic hazards, population and housing, land use, and hazardous materials. There's a lot of things that you need to, I believe that you need to look at. One of the main things that I think that is very much needed is some type of construction standards for building on liquefiable soils for the Midway area for the port. In fact, and the airport, in fact, in the olden days, the port had a law that says you always have to have 2 levels of underground parking or 2 levels of basements underneath each building. But then the port did an update to the port master plan and took out that great, fabulous requirement. Because what that requirement does, it takes out mostly all of the liquefiable soils that would be a geologic hazard. And so the only standards that the city of San Diego has for, let's say, sea level rise in the Midway area is porous pavement. That means if it rains and floods, the water can come all the way up through the streets instead of cracking the asphalt. That is their only standard. And so some regional standard really needs to be in place, because San Diego plans on, just building on top of shifting sands, and that's not fair for anybody who actually has to live on that ultimately. The other thing I wanted to mention is population and housing. The military, in the last couple of years or the last decade or so, they've had so much increase in the number of ships in San Diego, the number of military personnel in San Diego, but they never built them the affordable housing for their people to live in and their families to live in. And so one thing about the SPAR War, NAV War, even though you're not associated with them, I really think that you need to analyze that in your EIR, because where are all those people going to live? You actually have to analyze all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Any comments from committee members? Hearing none, we can go on to our next item, which means I can introduce a fellow person from my city. So moving on to item 3 is the Transportation Committee 101. Our Transportation Committee Staff Coordinator, Brian Lane, will provide us with some background on Transportation Committee purpose and give us a sneak preview of the year's plan.
Thank you, Chair Shu. Like you said, I'm Brian Lane. I'm a senior transit planner. I've been a staff member here at Sandag for almost 18 years. Next month will be my 18th year. I used to do consulting before that after graduating from San Diego State. A little more background about myself. I grew up here in San Diego. I grew up in East County. And so driving to me was the only way to get around. There was no buses, there was no trolley built until I was in my teens. It wasn't until I actually went into consulting for transit that I actually started getting more involved with buses and with transit. I then lived in Alpine for 10 plus years while working here. And so I drove down to the trolley most days and then would take the trolley in. My wife and my oldest now drive as well. So I kind of get it that, there's a mix of us that you need to drive. But when I can, I try to take transit as much as I can. It's easy for me from La Mesa. The trolley's right there. Recently, I bought an e-bike, and so I've been actually biking to work. I want one of your stickers. It's 11 miles, and on an e-bike, it's super easy. I can actually probably beat the trolley sometimes, depending on how long the wait is or if there's delays on the trolley. And I've been loving it. So I get it that, there's a mix. We all have a different stories and how we do things. And so as we bring a lot of items to you over the coming months, you'll be seeing different things. We'll be pushing transit and active transportation, but we get that not everyone in the county every day will be able to use those modes, that some people will still need to drive to get their kids to soccer practice, things like that. So that's enough on me. I'm going to move forward, hopefully. All right, so I think most of you were at the board meeting last week. The first few of these slides were the same presentation that Robin gave last week, so I'm not going to go through a lot of these in depth as much as she did, and she was a great presenter. Hopefully someday I'll become a great presenter like Robin. But what is Sandag? We're an MPO, and there's various MPOs throughout the state. Not getting clicks, guys. Can we click through? You can just click through on this slide. Will the mouse work? Probably not. No. We're also an RTPA, a Regional Transportation Planning Agency. That's a state designation. We're the Council of Governments. You can see the million hats we wear that does the regional housing needs. We're a consolidate agency, that's state law, that helps plan and build transportation projects. And then we're also the RTC, the Regional Transportation Committee, and that's due to Transnet, where we oversee the program and the funding for that program. Is that working? So what is SANDAG? And Robin did a great job of going over all this, but we use data. Using the data, we plan, we build, and we provide and preserve resources. And that's our overall theme as we move through everything. Yeah, it's not. So who do we serve? We have 3.3 million people in the county, the 18 cities in the county of San Diego, 17 tribal governments. We have a border with the US and Mexico and our major military installations, and that's a major part of our transportation as we think about that. And then our board of directors, all of you from the cities and the county serve on the board of directors and provide the input at that meeting. But as we start drilling down, we have a committee structure, and there's 6 committees that the electeds from the board then serve on. And this is the Transportation Committee, we're one of the 6. And under the Transportation Committee, we have 2 working groups. The newly formed Mobility Working Group, which kind of took a couple of different other working groups and merged it into one to really focus on mobility through all the various means, active transportation, cars, transit, all of those that are for mobility. And then we also have the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council that is under that. And both of these groups meet every 2 months, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a second. Those groups will be, we'll be trying to bring back starting next month and a monthly update on what those groups are up to, and have the chairs from those groups come to you and give an update on what they're doing. So the Transportation Committee role, so now we'll get into in your role, you will recommend policies to the board of directors related to the regional plan and other transportation planning and programming efforts. And then you also will sometimes recommend or approve yourself projects that are funded under the Regional Transportation Improvement Program. And I think Robin went a little bit into details about the RTIP that we call it, and that's the 5-year investment program. And that's one of the most important parts to actually do the things that we do that come out of the regional plan at that high level. We revise that every 2 years and make amendments multiple times throughout the year. That's one of the most frequent things you'll see that you'll be recommending to the board as we come here. Transportation Committee membership. There we go. There are 10 voting members representing the subregions: East County, North County Coastal, North County Inland, South County, and then the City of San Diego and the County of San Diego have seats on here. Additionally, we have members from the boards of the MTS and NCTD, and they choose who they send from their board to come here. And then the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority and the San Diego Unified Port District. All 10 of those have a vote here at the Transportation Committee. And then we do have Caltrans and the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association as an advisory role here. And then, like we have in the italics at the bottom, alternate members and primary members are always strongly encouraged to attend all committee meetings. I appreciate that we had quorum today, and hopefully we can continue to have quorum over the coming year. So your primary responsibilities. So if you took a chance to look at Board Policy 1, and it's an attachment in the report, staff report, the Transportation Committee has 26 listed responsibilities. I won't go over all of those today, but you have various recommend responsibilities, and you also have various approval responsibilities, those things that have been delegated down to you. If you have specific questions on that, I'll point to Emberlyn or Betsy to answer those types of questions. But I think some of the high-level ones, you will recommend transportation funding allocations to the board. The legislative program will likely be bringing to you to provide a recommendation on the comprehensive fare ordinance. Actually, we bring to you, and you have the authority to approve any changes to the fares for the MTS and NCTD. And then the big one is Regional Planning Committee as well, providing oversight with them, coordinate oversight on recommendations and implementation of components of the regional plan. Over the course of the year, we'll probably do a few joint meetings with the Regional Planning Committee I think we'll probably do one in April. We're kind of thinking where both committees will be here. We likely pull in Borders Committee as well to have all three committees to then talk about the things that we have in common with those two committees. Like I mentioned quickly before, we have the two working groups that report to the Transportation Committee. The mobility provides input to address those mobility challenges. They'll make some recommendations to put forth various policies, strategies, investments. That'll come to you as a recommendation from them, and then you either, depending on your authority, approve or recommend coming up from them. They're a similar membership to the board, one member, voting member, and one alternate from each of the member agencies, as well as from MTS, NCD, the port, and the airport authority. They're scheduled to meet every other month. And like I said, we'll ideally be bringing back what they're up to you as an information item as often as they meet. And then the second one is the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council. I've served as the staff liaison for that over the years. Someone that works with me now as a staff liaison. It's a very great group. We meet every other month to talk about specialized transportation for those who can't always take the regular fixed route transit or drive themselves. And that has 21 members representing all various service social agencies, seniors, persons with disabilities, low income, and others. And again, they meet every other month, and we'll be bringing back to you more often information on what they've been up to and if they have any recommendations as well. So some milestones from last year. A lot of things came through the Transportation Committee. The Otay Mesa East Port of Entry budget amendment was brought to you. I brought the TDA Triennial Performance Audit. That's the state funding, and we have to every 3 years do a big performance audit of SANDAG, MTS, and NCTD. All three agencies have always performed very well on that. We do get recommendations, bless you, from that, and we'll bring updates on that as well back to you on how we're doing with those recommendations. Also with the TDA state funding, we have to check the performance of MTS and NCTD. So my group has a huge data set of their performance metrics, and we go over that every couple months with staff from both agencies, and then we bring that to the Transportation Committee for you to review and then approve, and then that also then helps us get the next year's of funding for the state for the TDA dollars that we get, and that's a big pot of money for MTS and NCTD that they depend on for operations. Last year, we did a recommendation to develop the Vision Zero action plan. Sam Sanford here will be bringing that item back to you with a lot more information throughout the year. We're looking forward to that. And then, like I said, we had a lot of RTIP amendments constantly as the cities and various jurisdictions need to change things on what they had in the existing RTIP. We'll amend those, and those usually are very easy. An approval process, I think most of you all usually have the head nods on those that they make sense to do those amendments. Next year, we're going to, or over this year, sorry, our look ahead for this year, we're going to really focus on the agency priority projects specifically for you. Anything that delves with transportation, we'll bring forward to you. Colleen went over a lot of those, the agency priority projects, but the one specifically for transportation, we'll be bringing to you. 2021 regional plan, early action, the implementation of those, some exciting things, like she mentioned, the YOP, we'll be bringing that at the next Transportation Committee, an update on how that's going. We just kicked off a survey last week to ask the students how it's going, how they think it should be, and how often they ride. So we'll be bringing those results back to you later this summer. Our Rapids, that's the bus system. In the regional plan, we have a ton of rapid routes that are proposed in there. We actually won a Caltrans planning grant to study 3 specific routes and do some advanced planning. I'll bring an update on that project at our next Transportation Committee. Vision Zero, again, is a big part of that. And then we'll be hearing more about zero emission vehicles and our implementation of charging and getting the infrastructure out for that. And then the regional plan development, like Colleen mentioned, we'll be bringing back various things. We'll, in a couple months, we'll be talking about the vision goals and the performance measures for the regional plan, bring that to you and then to the board based on your recommendations or discussion and input. And then later this summer and fall, as we're working through the draft networks, we'll be bringing that to you as well for your input and recommendation to the board. So with that, I thank you for your time. My information's here. I will likely be sending out an email to all the members with my cell phone number. I won't make that public, but that's for you to contact me. If you have questions about the next transportation meetings, if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me about what's going on at the next meeting, what's this item about, what that item's about. If there's any questions on seating, things like that. I know we change things around a lot. So I appreciate your time. And with that, Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Brian. Let's move on to item number 4, which is on the consent calendar. And we have just one item on the consent calendar.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have
Oh, we
public
have public
comment on
comment
this
for
item.
item 3. I'm sorry. Do
Thank
you have
you
any
so
public
much.
comments?
Catherine Roots is our only public comment. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for that great report. What I wanted to talk about is something that you guys just haven't looked into, and I've been bringing it up for so long. Back in January 2021, the FAA changed their passenger facility charge policy to allow for normally restricted airport revenue to be used for non-exclusive transit corridors and stations. And that means billions in normally restricted airport revenue funding could be a replacement for your mileage tax. But and hopefully you'll be actually analyzing this in your supplemental EIR. But I want you to actually look at this, because this is some of the wording just so you see what it says. It says, this policy amends FAA policy to make rail lines that do not exclusively serve the airport PFC eligible. The PFC order currently states that airport ground access projects must be for the exclusive use of airport patrons and employees. And now a portion of the rail access project may be eligible even if the rail project in its entirety serves more than exclusively airport traffic. The airport supports the use of PFC funds to encourage the development of intermodal connections on airport property between aeronautical and other transportation modes. And now for the airport connectivity project, or the Central Mobility Hub, actually. For some reason, you guys are pushing to have the Central Mobility Hub at the city's 101 Ash Street project as part of a big new city hall, instead of having it at port headquarters, where it's specifically between the airport property and the transportation modes, which is the LOSAN corridor. Because of this new law, you could actually build your airport connectivity, the whole thing, the people mover, the Central Mobility Hub, all this billions in airport revenue could come to Sandag, so we could use it for the whole region. Right now, the what I call it is the airport hoards cash meant for everybody, because they pretend that they cannot mitigate for their increase in density that they have at the airport. And they make promises and then they don't fulfill them because none of you force them to fulfill them. And that is actually your goal. And so I really do want you to look at the this new 2021 order from the FAA that can give you everything you want. We can have everything, but nobody's looking at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Francesca. Now we can move on to item number 4.
Are there any member comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any member comments on the report or any questions for Brian? Right. Okay, well, now we can move on to number 4. So it's a consent calendar, and the only item on the consent calendar is really the minutes from October. So I'd like to see if Amber, can you give us a what is I guess if there are any restrictions for people who have not attended that meeting to vote on the consent calendar, the minutes?
Thank you, Chair. And I would refer to Sandag's board policy number 4, which states that member may vote on the minutes so long as they can attest that they have reviewed the record and given due consideration to the record.
Great. Okay, so moving to consent calendar, are there any member comments, questions on the consent item?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Zito seconds.
So let me take Anderson as the second and Councilmember Campillo as the who moves for the motion. Francisco, do you have any other public comments?
No, Chair, no public comments on this item.
Okay, so I think we can vote. And there are some of you that are new to to Sandag and this voting machine. Just remember, you have to push the number 1, not the green button above. Or the 2 or the 3.
Anticipate is 0.
Yes, not the blue button, but the actual 0.
Thank you. Item 4 does pass unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. Let's move on to reports. So item number 5 is the Fixing of America's Surface Transportation Act, Performance Management Targets. We have Sam Stanford here to give this presentation, Sam.
And thank you, Chair, and good morning, Transportation Committee. So, Sam Stanford, I commuted from Oceanside this morning, and I got to take the lovely coaster all the way down the full extent, so I get to experience it every day that I'm here, that lovely route. And it's a great route, going to be productive or social or catch up on naps sometimes with a busy life. But that's about an hour and a little. So just to keep the introductions going, I figured to take advantage of that. So I'm going to provide a quick overview of item 5. The complete report is included in today's agenda packet. I believe it starts on page 45. In a nutshell, federal performance management is all about continuous incremental improvements. It's a process of reviewing our current conditions, our trends, what we anticipate to happen in the future. We combine all of those together to set performance targets for what we think is going to happen in the future. Then we started a monitoring process, and we look and see how are we doing compared to those targets? Are we making progress towards them? And then we do it again and again. It's a rinse and repeat. It's a cyclical process. So what's special about these performance metrics with the federal designation in front of them is that they are the same across the entire nation. So every state DOT, every Caltrans across the nation has these same measures and they have the same data to inform them, and same for all the MPOs. So every Sandag version that there is in every urbanized area has these same measures. So with that common approach, Congress got what they wanted, where they can have a quick snapshot view of the nation, but there are limitations to these measures because everybody has to have the same data, and there's limitations to data availability. And I'll get to some of those limitations in a minute. But with that quick overview, today I will cover the structure of performance measures and how they're used at Sandag, and targets specifically, the status of those targets, and then lastly, the subsequent steps where we're going to be going with these in the future. And now, will the clicker work? Oh, actually, somebody else did it for me. So starting with the structure aspect. So from Federal Highway Administration, there are 3 groupings of performance measures, and they were kind enough to number them for us. Performance Management Rule 1, and then 2 and 3. Number 1 focuses on traffic safety, fatalities, serious injuries on our public roads. Number 2 looks at infrastructure condition. This is pavement and bridges. And then the last one, Performance Management Rule 3, looks at system performance. So this is reliability on our roadways, and then also includes freight metrics. With all MPOs and the state DOTs have to set targets. MPOs have 2 options. Sandag can either elect to support the state targets or develop regional targets and then also support those targets. It is staff's recommendation to support the state targets and the ones that are included in today's report. And this approach has also been presented to the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee and also the Mobility Working Group. So continuing with structure, where do these numbers live? Where do they go? The targets themselves and our monitoring of our progress on those targets live in the regional plan that's updated every 4 years that Colleen was mentioning earlier. There's an appendix to that report, and it has a very short summary of how we're doing, where our targets are, and an assessment of how we're doing on tracking to those targets. Additionally, On our Regional Transportation Improvement Program, we do a similar process where we are monitoring our support of these targets with how much we are investing in these different areas, such as pavement and bridges. So that's my really quick overview of federal performance management on the structure of it. Now let's get into the status of the targets and the target recommendations. First is safety, Performance Management Rule 1. And actually I fibbed a little bit. Since I got the topic of safety on here, I did want to take 30 seconds to give a quick overview of safety and safety efforts, since that's been a hot topic. As I mentioned earlier, the TC recommended to the board last year, 2022, to support a Vision Zero resolution, essentially pushing our region towards achieving 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries on our roadways. That resolution was adopted by the board, and it also enabled staff to continue to seek outside funding for creating a plan. And we were successful thanks to collaboration with Caltrans, the City of Vista, and the La Jolla Band of Luiseño Indians. We have a group project that is funded. Now we're going to be able to advance that Vision Zero plan quicker than we would have otherwise. With that plan, we are also working on a data dashboard, and that's going to be used as the basis and the support for that. It will be a data-driven plan, resulting in a list of project recommendations and policy considerations. So I wanted to just have this slide on here to show there is movement on the safety front, and take these 30 seconds to share those advancements. So with traffic safety targets, and with all the subsequent slides that I have on targets, I want to draw your attention to the desired direction column, the column with all those arrows on it. That's the direction we want our progress to be and our targets to be. In the area of safety, we want all these measures to be going down. And we want all fatalities, all serious injuries to be going down. And we can see that when we look at that last column, which is the change from the prior setting, and they are all reductions. None of them are reductions the size we'd like to see. We'd all like to see more, but they are moving in the correct direction in that incremental progress piece. On PM2, infrastructure condition, this rule and really all the following measures are limited to what's called the National Highway System. It is a subset of our transportation system. This is where we get to those data limitations. There are not national data on local roads for pavement and bridges and congestion. So for these following measures, keep in mind, please, that it's much more focused on highways and then some prime arterial roads, select prime arterial roads. Next slide, please. So looking at the bridge target slide, now we can see an up arrow for our desired direction and a down arrow. We want more bridges in good condition and fewer bridges in poor condition. And on this slide, the results are mixed. They're not all the targets are in the desired direction. And that's kind of a function of what we anticipate programming or funding, which we expect to improve conditions, but also we have deterioration or aging of these assets at the same time. So when you couple those together, we come up with our targets, which are these data informed where we expect to be in 2023 and 2025. For pavement, again, it's very mixed. The top two measures are for good and poor pavement on the interstate system alone. Those are all positive. Those are all tracking with where we want them to go. Then the bottom two are looking at the non-interstate national highway system. And there it's a little bit more mixed, where we have we'd like to see more good pavement and lower poor pavement. But in that 2 and 4 years, those are mixed on those ones. Last section on the status of targets is PM3. And here we get to essentially the reliability measures are the top two, followed by a freight measure at the bottom. The reliability measures, those are all tracking with where we'd want them to go, both in the 2-year and 4-year timeframe. And then on the freight measure, it's just flat. That's where we anticipate going, no major change on that index. So that wraps up the status piece, now getting on to subsequent steps. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a cycle, so I could just put a wheel on here and just say we're going to repeat this again, but some more immediate steps of what we're looking at. Pending TC approval, we will then go to a board for ratification of the targets and then submit the necessary documentation to Caltrans. Then in 2024, we get an opportunity to review the 4-year targets and see if they should be updated or not. This is in coordination with Caltrans. And then as we prepare the 2025 regional plan and the 2025 regional Transportation Improvement Program, then we will update the documents that go into that as well. So in closing, as a reminder, this is a action item. So the TC is asked to adopt the federal performance measure targets for performance management rules 1, 2, and 3. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chair for any discussions or questions.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item, Francisco?
Thank you, Chair. We do have 2 public comments on this item. First will be Tim Bylash, who will be followed by Catherine Rhodes.
Thank you for that report. Just a quick question and a couple of comments. I thought I heard the statement that we don't have data for the local roads in San Diego that SANDAG can consider in terms of fatalities. If that's true, I'd be interested in ways to get around that. I was hoping to highlight the figures in your great report. I don't know if it's possible to put them up, but I noted that in figure 1, looking at the county and state reports of fatalities and serious injuries, that there is, thankfully, a lot of great work that seems to be done down in this region in terms of addressing both of those. But it appears for the state that fatalities have gone up and for the county leveled off, but the serious injuries have gone down. I'd be interested in any ideas why that they haven't come down together and ways to augment the fatality aspect of this. Thank you.
Thank you, and my apologies, we do have one more public comment in the room, so I'll go to Nicole Burgess next, and then after Nicole, we'll go to Catherine Rhodes.
Thank you, Francesca, and I apologize for the late entry, but I just wanted to comment and thank Sam for taking Coaster and being an advocate for using your time efficiently. But I also wanted to just say I've followed some of the targets, and safety is a huge concern. I've actually talked to Sam quite a few times, so I appreciate it. I understand this whole aspect, and I appreciate SANDAG for really prioritizing Vision Zero, because that is a big first step, and our city of San Diego for prioritizing Vision Zero and have bold goals to reducing fatalities, which is super challenging. We know that, and we see that it's not going down really, that we still have dangerous drivers. And I appreciate the plan and a data dashboard with policy considerations. That's all fabulous. But I also want to, when do we implement? Do we have to wait 5 years for this plan? And I just want to bring up again, just this Mid-Coast Corridor, new, amazing transit line, $2.2 billion along a freeway. We talk about complete corridors. We want to build complete corridors, but still this corridor is super unsafe to ride. And when we can't have a city of San Diego that supports Vision Zero and SANDAG that wants to support Vision Zero and reduce fatalities, and we can't reduce our car lanes from 100 feet of cars and give us 4 feet of protected bikeway over there, we really have to think about the complete corridor and really take our lanes down of traffic. Do we need 2 lanes of traffic on Marina when we have a freeway? And when do we allocate that space that is so needed for people to walk and bike? And it's not just about biking. Look at Genesee. You have to cross 6 lanes of traffic to walk across that. And we shouldn't wait for community plan updates, because again, those are plans that we're just waiting on. We have the money, we have the resources, we have the desire, we have the leadership. And it's about implementing those when we have those dollars to come in and implement them and change the designs of our streets to actually make them safe. I cannot access Balboa transit station to the north. I have been door zoned. I've been attacked by a dog. It is fearful. I've had other collisions, and I've actually have a friend that has lost their nephew on Balboa Boulevard, on Marina Boulevard. So it's tragic, And when I see these flex posts come in, just a little bit here and there, it's just not enough. So thank you, Sam, for the presentation. I appreciate all the work we're doing, and it's just about really getting it on the ground and implementing it. So thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Catherine Rhodes.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and thank you for the report. But one thing about the report, it's about the state, and it's not about San Diego County. What I would like you to do, let's just say, as an example, on page 55 on your graph, if you could put where exactly San Diego County is for their, let's say, statewide serious injury rate. What is San Diego County? And then at the bottom of the, on the table, actually put a thing in that says, okay, what is it for San Diego County? That's actually very important information for us to know down here. The statewide things doesn't really give me good information for myself. For example, the CHP has, some information, and they said that there were 46 pedestrian fatalities in San Diego in 2021, with 18 on the freeway and 28 on the city streets. And for me, being a homeless advocate, I really wish there would be a vision zero for homeless deaths on our streets and our freeways. I believe that a lot of the fatalities, specifically probably on the freeway, are homeless people that, are wandering around because we don't have a place for them to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes the public commenters.
Any comments from Vice Mayor Zito?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thanks, Sam, for the presentation, and apologies in advance. This will be a little bit of sound like a broken record from last year too, but I do want to point out that I still have this concern that, the good news is that we do better than the statewide metrics, and I think that's great. The bad news is we're sitting here adopting metrics that, if we actually stick to, are going the opposite direction significantly from Vision Zero. And I think that's kind of a challenge. And I know that we need to adopt this, and I will be supporting adopting this, but I do have a couple questions. One of which, are there any MPOs in the state which do their own? You say, we're adopting Caltrans. Do any MPOs adopt their own, or does everybody adopt Caltrans?
The vast majority adopt Caltrans. There are some that go back and forth. There was a MPO that one year went alone, and then it went back to the state. So depending on how conditions are going, they've selected, but the vast majority do support Caltrans targets.
Okay, thanks. And logistically, if we were to, for example, target adopting our own for one section of that, is that doable?
I think with the rollout of the regional Vision Zero plan, that is done, and we have a project list and we can see what the anticipated effects of implementing those projects were, then we can actually start getting to those targets and saying, okay, as we implement this, we'll see this kind of change. We'll have that information in hand to make those kind of decisions.
Yeah, that's great, and thank you, because it's a perfect lead into my, what I would like to see is I don't know, when do we expect, you said it's accelerated, do we expect the Vision Zero action plan to be completed this calendar year, or do we think it's going to take longer than that?
I hope for this calendar year. There's a lot to go. To be honest, we have been awarded, or we've received notification of the award, but there's a lot of steps to get from that, from USDOT to Federal Highway Administration to essentially to SANDAG. Realistically, it's more like a year from receipt of the funds, and we do not know exactly when that'll happen. It's a brand new fund source, so Federal Highway Administration still needs to set up their processes. They've been told that this is happening, but now they need to actually set it up.
Okay, and then, again, yeah, so my request then would be that as part of the Vision Zero action plan, that we actually do incorporate developing our own non-motorized fatalities and serious injury rate and totals as part of this report. So we have a collective view into what we're actually trying to accomplish. That's all saying it's going the same direction. For my own edification, I am kind of curious. So the chart, on page 11, page 55, figure 5, that's showing rate of serious injury and fatalities for non-motorized vehicles against VMT. Does that, when we do these, do you know if this only captures metrics of pedestrians and cyclists that have had crashes with cars, or is that also capturing a cyclist that happens to hit a curb stop or a telephone pole or something like that, and there's no vehicle involved? Is that captured in this data?
In this data, it needs to have a vehicle involved.
It needs to have a vehicle involved. Okay, so that is interesting, but not quite as useful then. And then I just wanted to point out, I do find it interesting how, we do need to be careful with the way this data is used and how it's looked at, simply because if you look at that same chart, figure 5, it shows the trend rate as far as the accident rate going up over the 5-year trend. But if you look at the actual totals, the trend rate over the 5 years seems to be going down. And I do know, for example, Carlsbad just declared a state of emergency last year because their total rate was up over 200% over the last 2 years. So I find it sort of disconnected that we're saying that the trend is that the percentages are going up, but the totals are going down, because I think we all know there are way, way, way more people on bikes and e-bikes and non-motorized transportation right now. So you would think we would actually be expecting an increase in the total number of accidents while the trend might be going down, although since the trend is against VMT, one would hope that it would go down, but it's, that's in a function of how many people miles drive. But anyway, so thanks for that. I just think I found that a little bit confusing and concerning. I understand that this, is the way the data is represented right now, but I do think that I would like to make sure as part of our Vision Zero action plan, we are trying to generate our own non-motorized data sets and objectives that they can be incorporated into this in future years. Thanks.
We don't have any members online, so I think hands will work. Supervisor Anderson.
When I was listening to your presentation, thank you very much. I'm still a newbie.
We have to all look out for each other.
I think that you covered this, but you did it quickly. Last year, we did a referral to ITOC in the Public Safety Committee. Did we reach out to them this time prior? Because in the board item, it didn't say we did. But I think you said we did in your report, but it went quickly. I just wanted to confirm that we used the same process as last year.
So for this year, it's a little different in that we have the PM1, which is safety, which comes every single year, and that's probably the one that people are most familiar with. The other two are every 4 years. So this is really just the second time they've ever come because it's a fairly new program in that respect. For Public Safety Committee, it did not align as far as calendar availability. So we were able to go to ITOC and Mobility Working Group.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, again, even with my trepidation on what I mentioned, I do know we need to move this forward so we can keep our funding. So I'll go ahead and move a staff recommendation on this.
Thank you. So I have a move and a second from Supervisor Anderson. But I'd like to ask a few questions to make comments as well before we move on to a vote. So based on these comments and this data, I have this kind of a broad observation. Maybe Sammy, you could comment on it. These measures are started out from Caltrans and federal, like maybe it's federal government and then Caltrans. Would you say they're pretty auto-centric in terms of approach, in terms of safety measures? Auto-centric meaning, like, for example, it's based on 100 million miles rate in terms of accidents. Yeah, it's based on VMT. It's not based on much else.
Yeah, VMT is essentially a way of measuring exposure, how much people are out on our transportation system. The data that's being used is a Federal Accident Reporting System, or FARS, for the fatalities. And that's the nationwide data set. It does involve vehicular crashes specifically. So that's kind of a limitation of the data.
Yeah, so it's based on autos. Do we get any credit if we reduce VMT? Like if in the near future, we hope to reduce VMT considerably. So if every year we reduce VMT by maybe even 2-3%, when the rate may not change, but the numbers of fatalities and accidents may change quite a bit.
Yeah, and the actual calculation for the performance measures are written in the rule. So there are functions of those measures, such as we were required to use a 5-year rolling average. And that's why you might see some of those trend lines looking very distinct from what the annual observations are, as Mr. Zito was mentioning. So the function of the measures and how we are required to use them is set in the rule. We don't get to change that part. But yeah, since it is a ratio to VMT, if VMT changes, so too would the end result.
Great. And one last question, and I'm not suggesting you did this year, but maybe in the future we can look into this, which is Vision Zero. It's a great goal, but I noticed in my city we have a great goal, but I don't know if we put any additional funding into Vision Zero. We will be in the near future. So is there any tracking of actual funding to help Vision Zero, and do we have a matrix there in terms of projects and funding? Because maybe we can also see which projects or funding is most effective as well.
Yeah, so we got two aspects to that answer. So currently within our regional transportation improvement program, as a project sponsor, a city, the county, or someone is putting a project into the RTIP, they actually go in and they describe the project, if it is safety related or not, and they actually quantify what % of the total project cost is related to safety, because it might be a comprehensive project that is adding some safety elements. We're able to track that information, and that's what we use in the RTIP appendix for this federal performance system to show how we are supporting the target achievement. When it comes to our future efforts with Vision Zero action plan, that plan will come out with policy recommendations of what we see from best practices at other MPOs, at cities and counties and states, and other ideas that we get from the public at large, from CVOs, on how we can update our practices, our policies and procedures. And then that would come back to the policy advisory committees and ultimately the board for consideration.
May I add something to that,
ahead,
Chair, if I may? So I think, the question about how do we fund some of these improvements that will help us address Vision Zero? And just one of the things I wanted to point you to in the annual report that you each have, if you look at page 15, this identifies how much of the Transnet local streets and roads funding was provided to each of the local jurisdictions. This is an eligible funding source to make some of these improvements that you all are talking about. So whether it's bikeway improvements, sidewalks, anything on the roadways to help address that. And I think it's also important to point out that we have been working with your local staffs, planning directors, public works directors, to look at how the requirements currently in our board policy, how these can be spent. And there's a lot of interest from your staffs on changing that so that it could be more toward Vision Zero and focused more on bikes and PEDs as opposed to things that help to assist vehicles. So just wanted to kind of flag that for you all.
Great, thank you. Any other last comments from any committee members? If not, we can, and we've already got the public comments, so we can go ahead and go for the vote.
You need a motion.
Oh, no, I did. We got Anderson and Zito.
And that motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great, thank you all. We can go on to item 6, Specialized Transportation Grant Program, a retroactive scheduled amendment request, and we have Jenny Russo to give us a presentation.
Good morning, TC members. My name is Jenny Russo. I'm the Grants Program Manager here at SANDAG. I wear 2 hats. I actually wear one that helps bring funding into the region, and the hat that I'm going to wear today is talking about our grant distribution programs. My team manages a number of competitive grant programs. You'll hear more about them in the next item. So here today, I'm here to talk to you about one of those particular programs. It's called the Specialized Transportation Program, or STGP. The STGP improves mobility for older adults and individuals with disabilities whose needs are not met by conventional transit or paratransit services. Eligible applicants are cities, nonprofits, and our transit agencies who use the grant funding to support several different grant project types. Operating grants can fund things such as mileage reimbursement, volunteer driver programs, or transit pass subsidies. Mobility management projects include transportation brokerage services, travel information and referral services, and travel training. And then lastly, capital grants, which are vehicle or equipment purchases and contracted transportation services. Currently, the STGP has about 50 active projects and more than 130 vehicles are out that have been purchased through our program. So a lot of program success. Item 6 contains 2 items regarding the STGP. One is an informational item and the other item is for approval. The informational item concerns how the STGP monitors grant program performance. So just some background for you. Since the inception of the program in 2006, cost per unit has been a significant component in the evaluation of our applicants and our grantees. For some background, the cost per unit is the sum of the grant funds and the minimum match divided by the total number of one-way passenger trips or units of service. Cost per unit accounts for 25% of a grantee's annual performance evaluation, so pretty significant. SANDAG staff utilized the performance evaluation score during the call for projects to establish if a past performance adjustment is necessary. Additionally, projects are placed on a cost efficiency watch list if they don't fall within 130% of their proposed cost per unit threshold within 6 months of the start of the project. Once a project's placed on the cost efficiency watch list, the grantee has to submit a recovery plan to us, which a detailed description and viable action steps about how they'll remediate the deficiency within 6 months. If their performance doesn't improve, SANDAG staff would request this committee to consider whether to continue the grant project or to terminate the grant. Today, we have never had to terminate a grant, just for some background for you, but that is an option of what would happen if the program couldn't remediate it. So cost per unit has been effective at monitoring and enhancing our performance for many of the program's years. But here today, we're here to talk to you about how there's some changes that are going on. So transportation programs such as the STGP have been dramatically impacted by COVID-19 and other constraints that all of you are very familiar with. So driver shortages, inflation, supply chain issues, things like that. Over the past 2 years, and in consideration of all of these challenges, we've done a number of things to help our grantees be successful under the program. So the Board of Directors has approved numerous waivers to our Board Policy 35, which outlines the required date for a vehicle purchase contract to be issued and for those vehicles to be placed into service. 21 amendments have been issued for additional time for vehicles that were placed out of service or reduced contract spending. And then lastly, we've issued 13 amendments for modified scopes of work to allow some of our grantees to provide alternative services, which are things like delivering personal protective equipment, meals, and other essential goods to our STGP target population. During the last 2 annual performance reviews, we've actually not utilized the cost per unit performance measurement due to widespread increases in that cost and knowing that it's really not an effective measure and it's harming a lot of our grantees. So due to these challenges and the steps that we've been taking to try and remediate some of the challenges, we've obviously learned cost per unit is not really the best, most appropriate way to measure performance on our grant programs. So we're looking for different factors that are more within the control of the grantee that can help demonstrate performance. So what we're doing, we're evaluating the weight of the cost per unit. As I mentioned, it's 25% currently, and looking to see what other efforts that we could use to measure performance monitoring. So we're going to implement those changes starting in our cycle 12 call for projects. You're going to hear about those in the coming weeks about our funding recommendations. So those projects would be subject to the new performance monitoring objectives that we're talking about today. So some of the new measurements we're thinking about would be things like compliance with federal rules and regulations, because half of the component is funded by the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 program. So following those guidance is very important. It'd also be things like the American with Disabilities Act and other areas. Timeliness of grant requests, reports, and communications of the grantees with us, and also if there's any reoccurring invoicing, reporting errors, things like that. So we're going to keep you appraised of any changes. Anything that we do comes to your committee for consideration through our quarterly progress status reports, and we're going to talk about those in the next item. So the other component of item 6 is a schedule amendment request for your consideration. We have several board policies which you're already familiar with. Board Policy 35 is the one that governs our grant programs, and it outlines our procedures to make sure our grantees are performing their projects on a timely basis. Section 3.1.4 of the policy requires the use of the vehicle for the benefit of the public must begin within 3 months following the acceptance of the vehicle. And one of our grantees, San Ysidro Health, received a vehicle last April. This was April 8th of 22, and they thought that a Class B driver's license was required to operate it. We do get this confusion sometimes from our grantees. So at the time, they were trying to find a driver that could have a Class B license. There's not a lot of folks that have those. So it took a very long time for them to be able to put this vehicle into service. They didn't communicate that very well with us. We tried to reach out to them multiple times. We didn't hear back. We finally were able to make connection with them, understand what the constraint was, let them know they actually don't need a Class B license to operate this vehicle. There's still a driver shortage that's happening. So what we've done is we worked with them to find a date when they can put that vehicle into service, and the date that they've given us is March 1. That's their definitive date. So the action that we're asking for you today is the transportation is asked to approve a retroactive schedule amendment to allow San Ysidro Health to have a specialized transportation grant program vehicle in non-use status from July 8, 2022 to February 28th, 2023. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any public comments, Francisca?
We do not have any public comments on this item.
And any comments from any commissioners? Sandy?
I had a question. You indicated that the new round of a cycle of grants would be 12, cycle 12?
Yes.
For grants. What is the timeline for that? When will applications be started to be accepted, and what are the deadlines?
It actually closed.
Oh, they
So we
closed.
had it last year. They closed
Okay.
in July, but we'll be bringing the funding recommendations here to this committee later this month. It's a biannual cycle. So every 2 years, we'll see it coming out again, probably in the springtime of 325 or so. But we definitely do outreach to everyone. All of our typical cities, your city especially, is very involved in that program. So we'll be sure to let you know the timing of it.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Narano, did you have a comment or question? You
Put your microphone on. Sorry.
so I have a motion
thank you.
from.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to make a
Commissioner-
motion to support staff's recommendation.
Great, we have a motion. But in Supervisor Anderson, you had your hand up too, so.
I did. By the way, I'll second the motion. You mentioned that this is a frequent issue where they think they have to have a Class B. Is there any way, have you thought in terms of on the application, if they're asking for a car, including that, so that, by the way, San Ysidro does an incredible job in my district, and so I'm all for this. But it just seems like if it's continuing problems, that perhaps on the front end, explain to people how things work would may save
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah, we do continued education to our grantees so that they're aware. And as they purchase vehicles, Sandag actually purchases those on their behalf to meet all the federal rules. So we can continue to do outreach to them and let them know when they need to have a Class B license versus a traditional Class C. So we'll keep doing that effort. I mean, this was a great example learned that we need to help them.
Any other comments, questions? So we have a motion that's made by Commissioner Narano and seconded by Supervisor Anderson. We can go for the vote.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Great. Item 7, quarterly status update of Sandag's grant programs. We have Tracy, Jenny, and Lauren to present the report.
Hi, I apologize, a little switch on technology here. I'm using a mouse instead of the clicker. Okay. Well, good morning, Chair Shu and members of the board. My name is Tracy Furshaw. I am the program manager for some of the SANDAG grant programs here. With me is Lauren Lee. Her and her colleague Kim run the EMP program, and then Jenny is standing in for Ali Vasquez, who runs the Specialized Transportation Grant Program, along with her colleague Zach Rivera. So we have a number of grant programs here at SANDAG, and they are all programmed through different funding sources. So I'll start with the Transnet funded grant programs. The Transnet Extension Ordinance and Expenditure Plan provides funding for a variety of regional competitive grant programs. And these grants are available to local jurisdictions, transit agencies, and nonprofit organizations that help implement the 2021 regional plan. Grant programs under this funding include the Environmental Mitigation Program, Land Management Grant Program, Smart Growth Incentive Program, and Active Transportation Grant Program, and Senior Mini Grant Program. Additionally, SANDAG receives Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 funding that is distributed through the Section 5310 Grant Program. And the Senior Mini Grant Program and the Section 53 Grant Program are both administered through the Specialized Transportation Grant Program, which Jenny just presented on in the previous item. We also have another grant program, the Access for All funding for that program comes from the CPUC and will be coming online in the March timeframe. And then we have another one that is in their first cycle, which is the Housing Acceleration Program, which I also help administer. So I'm here today to present the SANDAG Grant Program's quarterly status update. This quarterly status update is reported to ITALC, TC, and the Regional Planning Committee on a obviously quarterly basis, and provides an overview of progress and performance of projects funded through these grant programs. Some of you may be familiar with this report, but recognizing that there may be some new faces on this year's board, I would like to take the opportunity to briefly walk through the report and some of the attachments. So you can find this report on page 70 of your tablets or the agenda packet if you'd like to follow along. Okay, there we go. I thought it was, okay. So during the reporting period, which is July 1st through 2022 through September 30, 2022, 9 projects were completed, 8 projects were on the watch list, and 1 SGIP project has withdrawn from the grant program. So I just want to draw your attention to the report itself, the cover report. We have a couple of links on here. So each paragraph under the grant program is a brief synopsis. We report, again, like I said, on SANDAG awarded projects, how much funding has gone to a number of projects, and how many are completed and closed out. And then I also want to bring your attention to these links here. They're in blue, and you can, if you want to know any more about that project, you just click on this link, and it should take you right to the sandag.org website. So each grant has their own landing page on this. So going back to the report, we'll go to attachment 2 now, which is page 76 of your agenda packet. Okay. This is a discussion memo. This is really the meat of the report. It shows you, it highlights what activities have happened during that quarter that we wanted to, showcase for you guys. So the environmental, also here is another link that goes to our status reporting tables where each project individually is reported on the status. And if we can maybe blow that up a little bit, so you can take a look. These are all the projects, and the ones that are active, and then in blue are the ones that have completed during that quarter. We report on the project, the grant expiration date, the execution date, the amount of the grant, the matching that was put up for that grant. We also have some performance measurements here with I can't really see here. Let me put my glasses back. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we also present on the percentage of the grant amount that they pulled down on expenses, so you know that they're using the grant amount in an efficient way. Then we have also the percentage of it complete compared to their scope, schedule, and budget that they submit with the application. And then we have a notes where we have either anything that we need to be highlighted about that project or what their next steps are in the next quarter. And then if you see here, we do this for every grant program. This is the smart growth. And then we have active. And then we also just included the housing, since they're in their first cycle now and they're starting to move on their grants. And then, as like I said, the Access for All grant that will be coming online will also be included in this report. So going back to the attachment 2, I'll just say real quickly what we have here, the environmental mitigation program. We have one project completed. We report on whatever projects are on the watch list and the reasoning for them being on the watch list. Here you have the San Diego Audubon Society, and the reason for it is prevailing wage requirements. The Smart Growth Program, we had four planning projects completed by the City of San Diego, and we also had the City of La Mesa complete their Complete Streets Design Manual. We have one project on the watch list, and again, that's for prevailing wage requirements as well. The active transportation, we did not have any projects completed this quarter. We did have three projects are still current. Most of the active transportation grant program projects have been completed, so we only have about 3 left from the last cycle. And one is on the watch list for prevailing wage issues as well. This is the Specialized Transportation Grant Program. We have three completed projects: Jewish Family Services, Peninsula Shepherd Center, and the Arc of San Diego. 20 projects are currently on schedule, and 5 projects were placed on the watch list. Okay, yes, so when we have reasons why they're placed on this quarterly status. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's go then to attachment 3. And attachment 3 is usually how we wrap up our report. It's a project showcase of either projects that have been completed during the quarter or have met major milestones or events. So here, the first picture here, let me see, let me pull this up here. The first picture here is from Jewish Family Services. It's their On the Go project. It's a senior transportation truck at the Sandag Community Fair, which was just highlighted in the video at the beginning of the meeting. We have the second picture here from EMP Land Management Grant, Chaparral Lands Conservancy, Rarest Plants 2. They did some seed bulking and restoration efforts to improve 3 high priority MSP plant species, including, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. You can help me out, Lauren, if you want. Orchis spineflower, short-leaved Dudley, and Orchis brodia. Okay. The EMP grant aimed to increase available seed and restore supplement and productivity manage these high priority populations. And then lastly, we have over here on the bottom, the city of San Diego completed 4 SGIP planning grants this quarter. The bottom right picture has illustrations that were included in their final plan for the Claremont Transit-Oriented Development Design Concepts Project. The design concepts demonstrate how TOD will integrate within older, lower density suburban corridors and retail centers. And the conceptual multimodal improvements show how pedestrian and bicycle and transit improvements can help and guide future developments. So we do have an attachment 4 here I don't have a copy of that, but attachment 4 is a letter of withdrawal from the county and the reasons why, previous efforts undertaken to maintain the project schedule, challenges encountered in the original implementation plan, and understanding that the county would like to reapply during a future SGIP grant cycle once a path forward and planning efforts is known. So this wraps up my report. Oh, and by the way, I did take the 280. I pick it up in Escondido. I love it. Thank you, MTS. And Sandag, because it goes down the bus only lane. Oh my God, love it. Okay. All right, so this wraps up my report, and the grants team is here to answer any questions you may have. And also I have a representative from the County of San Diego if you have any questions regarding their withdrawal. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, do you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple things here for the committee's benefit. So I don't know if all of you are aware, but Sandag gives out multiple grants, and we have been for many years. So honestly, well over $100 million. I'm going to find out how much it is. We've got 4 areas of grant programs. So we've got smart growth grants. Those are, it's only local jurisdictions who are eligible for those. And those fund things like, it's really transportation infrastructure that supports development. So sidewalks, bikeways, there are seating areas, outdoor dining areas. That's the kind of thing that the smart growth grants provide funding to. And again, it's just for the cities and the county. Active transportation. So we have an active transportation grant program for bikeways, pedestrian improvements. The environmental mitigation program. So those are grants that help. We provide this funding to largely nonprofit organizations who then utilize that funding to take care of habitat areas that were required as part of a mitigation measure for a transportation project that Sandag has built. And then the 4th area is specialized transportation. And these are grants that are given out to organizations who can provide transportation to folks who otherwise would not be able to get around, either using public transit or can't use the ADA services because it's outside that boundary. And so there are lots of organizations. I see Arun Prem here who runs FACT. That's one of the organizations that helps provide these important trips, and they're often recipients of Sandag grants. So I just wanted you all to have a sense of that. We bring these quarterly updates that lay out here is the status of all the grants, because we need to make sure that if we're putting money out there, the grantees are following through on their requirements, meeting deadlines, providing the services, building the project. So just an important thing that I think at times gets lost in a big part of what Sandag does. Most of these programs come out of the Transnet ordinance, so they're actual set aside. So the EMP program is a percentage of funding that comes in from Transnet, that half-cent sales tax. Smart growth is a percentage, and that's how that gets administered. So with so many new members here, I just wanted to share that and thank the team for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Any comments, Francesca, from the public?
No public comments on this item, Chair.
Any comments or questions from Sandy? We'll go with you first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have a question for staff. Looking at the watch list, I was wondering, because there was reoccurring violations like prevailing wage, do you have any mechanisms in place to prevent that so it doesn't get there for the applicants?
We do have a accelerating, jump in?
We have a couple of different things. So we withhold payment. So every month when payroll's processed, we have a consultant that's monitoring all of our capital projects to ensure that they're following prevailing wage. If they're not, they're notifying us. We withhold payment to that grantee until they have compliance. And there's an escalation procedure in there. You know, if it's 60 days, they might get a letter. If it's 90 days, then we'll escalate it. We also have the option of notifying the Department of Industrial Relations, the DIR, if there's project non-compliance. And there are 2 projects that's mentioned in the report. Either we've reported on behalf of the grantee or the city in those cases has done that as well. So we do have some recourses with them. I suppose if it became a reoccurring issue with a particular grantee, we could bring that here. I mean, that's part of the intent of the report, is to inform you on what's happening globally on the programs. And if there is some action that you wanted to take or some advice for us, we're happy to take that back and work on those.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Tara, I just wanted to say, I appreciate that. And I was just wondering, just to, I guess if it's an educational thing or informational thing for the applicants to realize like how important that is, not to violate it. So yeah.
Yeah, and something we started this year, since COVID was really impacting a lot of projects, we couldn't do, in-person meetings, but we've started to attend all of those, individual contractor meetings when projects are starting, reminding them specifically of what the requirements are. We meet with the grantees when they're awarded funding so they understand what their responsibility is, and really working a lot closer with them to educate and let everybody know how serious it is and that we take it very seriously to make sure that these projects are following state law and these workers are being paid, as they're supposed to be.
Thank you.
Great. Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. And I was just noticing under the Specialized Transportation Grant Program that something that makes sense is that 3 of the programs are on the watch list due to high cost per trip relative to high gas prices, driver shortages, and inflation. However, I'm curious why that just doesn't impact all of them, and because they're all doing effectively the same thing. And you did give the one example where there was somebody trying to look for a Class B driver, which clearly could come into play there. But maybe I'm wondering if there are opportunities of, if some programs are managing this better than others, of sharing information that says, hey, your trips are higher than these other programs, and this is how they're dealing with that. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, Brian mentioned we have the Social Services Transportation Advisory Council at STAC. We do bring issues like that to there. There's also Council on Access to Mobility, CAM, that meets, that we have our grantees come and speak and say, hey, here's things that we're doing. Some of the reason not all of those grantees are on the watch list is they can diversify their funding. So they might charge it to a different source or a different grant, so it doesn't directly impact here. Some of our grantees are limiting trips to keep that cost down. It just sort of depends on who that entity is and what options that they have. We work with them and try and exhaust all of those and help them understand what's there. But some of them, they've kind of gone through all the options that they can, and that's sort of what's left over, and that's why we include them. But obviously, as I mentioned previously, we're trying to change that and see what else that we can do.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners, committee members? Well, before we come to a close here, I just want to thank staff for this report. This is informational, so it was great. And thank all the commissioners for attending. And I look forward to having another great year for this committee and doing good work for SANDAG. Thank you for attending. And our next meeting is February 17th. And as we go through the year, I hope you, or if you're not the primary, please make sure the primary can't come, and if not, please attend. So we do have a quorum and keep this committee going. So thank you all for being here, and we'll see you on the 14th. That's the next Transportation Committee meeting. 17th, I'm sorry. I'm glad you're here.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned, thank you.
I was like, we're not coming on ballot.